So, before we begin, quick history lesson. So, this is the 11th installment in the Hellraiser series, but the first reboot since the series premiered back in 1987. The original film is considered a milestone in horror because of its body horror and, to some degree, its effects. Particularly when one of the characters is reanimating, but really he was melting, and they just did it in reverse. Just props to the special effects people in that film in general. Bravo. That said, also an iconic design for Pinhead and this weird, different take on horror. All of it just worked to create a film that wasn't just a footnote in horror. It became a milestone in horror. It's right up there with Friday the 13th, Halloween, Child's Play, and A Nightmare on Elm Street. Pinhead is one of the quintessential horror monsters. Horror creatures? Horror men. Horror things. Hell, on 2 different occasions he was actually tapped to be in a Versus film. There was one where he was going to fight Michael Myers and it was going to be called Helloween. Helloween. Yeah, that's the way they were going to pronounce it. But nonetheless, Hellraiser versus Michael Myers. Don't know how that would have worked, but it could have been interesting. The version that I think would have been more interesting would have been at the very end of Freddy versus Jason, while Jason and Freddy are duking it out, Camp Crystal Lake would have slowly have been turned into hell. And then Hoax would have separated the two. Pinhead would have risen from the fire in hell and said, "Gentlemen, what seems to be the problem?" And then the sequel would have been Freddy versus Jason versus Pinhead. I would pay to see that. All that said, let's talk about Hellraiser 2022. Thank you for welcoming me onto your screens or onto your headphones, depending on how you're watching this. I'm Eddie, and this is The Rollback. And folks, today I'm going to be talking about Hellraiser 2022, aka... That's too easy, isn't it? I'm not going to go there. I'm not. A young woman must confront the Cenobites and the scary monsters that hide behind this puzzle box as she tries to save her brother. So, real quick, on the actors, we have Miss Odessa Azin. I'm mispronouncing that. I know that for a fucking fact. But she is our protagonist. Her name is Riley McKendry. One of the two. Anyway, she struggles with severe drug addiction. But she is our protagonist in this film because addiction does kind of fit within this film and the whole message that they're trying to go with. Jamie Clayton has the unenviable task of playing the new Pinhead. She's the Hell Priestess? Leader of the Cenobites. Adam Frazier plays Colin, Matt's boyfriend. Matt is... Adam Fassian plays Matt's boyfriend. Who's Matt? Matt is Riley's brother, who's played by Brandon Flynn. He's Riley's estranged brother. He's trying to help her through her addiction, but also he's the first sort of victim of the Cenobites. We have a guy that gets killed in the beginning, but Matt's death is really what kicks off the whole film. We still have one more person to talk about. Drew Starkey, he plays Trevor. Riley's boyfriend, who's a bastard. We'll get into him more later. We got one more character, though. Mr. Ronald Vaught, played by Gordon, and I'm not going to try pronouncing his name. Look it up. You try to fucking pronounce that name. All that said, the pros of this film. So, to start, in the original series, the box just unleashes the Cenobites, right? That's all it does. Whereas, in this version of the film... there's a bit of a cool twist. After 5 sacrifices, whomever is left after the 5th sacrifice gets a wish. Initially, Vought wanted pleasure, and they stuck a weird nerve thing in his chest that causes him agonizing pain over and over and over again, and it won't dull. It'll just pull on a different fucking nerve. So that happened. That's a thing. Anyway, Riley is playing with this puzzle box. She gets tricked into playing with the puzzle box by Trevor. Her brother goes down, and then this poor girl named Nora goes down. And Jesus, her Yeah, I'll get into it in a sec. Essentially, they end up at the mansion trying to fend off the Cenobites while also trying to save her brother. So, in addition to addiction to drugs and power, the whole story of this film is about chasing a new high. Theoretically, the Cenobites, we have such things to show you, this pain becomes pleasurable and yada yada. It just goes down this really dark rabbit hole. Now, to their credit, they do a lot of new things with this. Besides the fact that your actions have consequences, a la John Wick, the Cenobites are just straight up nightmare fuel in this film. In the previous one, it felt like, oh, these are just dudes in weird costumes. This one, the effects, it's nuts. And I don't know if this makes sense, but the Cenobites are beautifully grotesque. Like, I almost want to call it art, but like a disturbing art that I would never buy, if that makes sense. It's weird. It's a little weird. Again, Jimmy Clayton, shout out to her. She has the role of Pinhead, but she makes it her own role. This dark and twisted, maleficent force, but also she's not inherently evil. She's merely a driving force. She gives the tasks to Riley as far as 2 more sacrifices, you can get whatever you want. She's not after Riley, she's after sacrifices. There's a big difference in the two. Like Freddy Krueger, who simply wants to murder just to murder and be feared. Pinhead doesn't really give a shit who goes down, who dies. It's all almost for sport. Does that make sense? By the way, warning: the gore and the torture in this film is hard to watch at times. It's weird because everyone gets flayed, and it's not even that hard to watch. But there's a scene where Nora has been stabbed and targeted by the box. She has hooks in her shoulders and her ankles and in her stomach, and she's being pulled in 2 different directions. And the Cenobite priestess, in one of the most ow scenes I've seen in a very long time, not since Hostel have I cringed this much, takes out a pin, jabs it into Nora's neck very slowly through, and then all the way out. And to her credit, the actress that plays Nora gurgles, screams throughout the entire time. And it's nuts because you're almost desensitized to the hooks and the flaying, but this needle hurts. It's weird. It doesn't make sense, but it worked. If the whole point of this film was to get you to cringe, trust me, man, I cringed. I cringed real fucking hard at this part. Jeez. So the cons, the biggest con in this film is really, can you root for our heroes, if you can call them that? Trevor's a bastard. Riley, she's not a terrible person, but she causes the death of her brother, who I can argue was a good guy. He wasn't trying to do anything wrong. He was just trying to help his sister. It's kind of hard to like anybody in this. Colin, maybe. He's one of the only pure-hearted good dudes. Vought deserved to fucking die, and the hell that's going to come to him. The Cenobite priestess offers him power, and he says, yeah, and then he gets taken up and almost flayed into an angel form. That's besides the point. Yeah, I get the feeling that maybe there was some more writing that could have been done to make some of the characters more likable. Maybe Trevor could have been a tragic sacrifice, and we'd be okay, he redeemed himself. Something along those lines. But that doesn't happen. That said, this was a Hulu release, which is a bit odd. This movie probably would have made some solid money in theaters. I can't imagine the budget was very high, maybe $5 million, if that. They weren't on a lot of expensive location shots, and the whole last 40 minutes of the film takes place at a mansion. So I can't imagine it was expensive. Maybe next time releasing in theaters, I mean, even if it's a $5 million film, $5 million to market it, you make 40 mil, who's going to scoff at 30 mil? All right, that's right, Mickey made this. Yeah, Mickey don't give a fuck about 30 mil. That said, though, I do recommend the film. It's not for the squeamish, though, fair warning. B, solid B. It's a good movie for Halloween time, and I imagine there will be a sequel because it was well enough made. I gotta imagine it's gonna be well enough received. Apparently, Prey is already set to receive a sequel. Hellraiser might too. That's it. That's going to end it for this episode of The Rollback. Please like and subscribe. We'd greatly appreciate it. We're always trying to grow this YouTube channel. Also, go check out our podcast. We'd greatly appreciate it. We're covering a lot of horror stuff, a lot of Halloween stuff. 'Tis the season after all. That said, I've been Eddie, and this was The Rollback. We'll see everybody.